Hey, welcome to LoreFactsTV, and welcome to our very first Deltarune video. We wanted to join the discussion with Deltarune theorists as we expand our content beyond Call of Duty, so we figured, hey, why not hit the ground running with my thoughts on the future of the game and why I think people might be critically misinterpreting some Chapter 5 teasers we've gotten so far. In this video, we're going to dive deep into some stuff I've seen talked about quite a lot but misunderstood, as well as some other information I've noticed people forgetting, and potentially the secret boss, so definitely stay tuned. But before any of that, let's get this out of the way. Spoiler warning for Deltarune Chapters 1 through 4. If you have not played any of the currently available content and are planning on doing so, press the button below to save this video to your watch later playlist and just go play the game. We'll be right here when you get back. Ready? Great, let's get into it. There are plenty of obvious signposts to the next chapter within Chapters 3 and 4. In fact, I would say that Chapter 5 is arguably the most signposted of any chapter so far. We had small teases to the computer lab by the annoying dog in Chapter 1, and Chapter 2 straight up showed us Chris opening up a dark fountain in their own home. These both gave us an idea for the location of the next chapter. But with Chapter 5, not only have we seemingly had the location entirely confirmed, but also the boss and major themes as well. Throughout Chapters 3 and 4, we are given this hint after hint after hint to the fact that Chapter 5's Dark World is going to be, and I quote, the field of pink and gold. Thanks for that one, Gerson. Which is a vast garden, charred in inferno of jealousy. We also see what appears to be Asgore depicted in the prophecy images from Chapter 4. And the prophecy image here is especially interesting because the game's code specifically denotes it as a boss image, which is the exact same descriptor it gives to the images of Queen Antenna, who were the bosses of their respective chapters. This suggests, in my opinion, that Asgore will likely be the Chapter 5 main boss, the character that we interact with for the majority of the chapter only to have to face off against at the very end. The Inferno of Jealousy suggested here likely relates, well, obviously relates, to Asgore and Toriel. As of the end of Chapter 4, it seems pretty obvious that Toriel has moved on. She spends the night dancing and drinking with Sans, a follow-up on their semi-flirtatious meeting we were, sadly, privy to back in Chapter 2, and this also calls back to a line back in Chapter 1 when meeting Sans and suggesting he befriends her mom. He says, and I quote, "I already befriended your mom last night." Terrible joke, by the way. At the time, we assumed this was simply just a gag, in essence a your mom joke. It now seems likely that that was actually just straight up the truth. Perhaps Sans and Toriel have been speaking very regularly, and only now has the relationship budded enough that Chris and thus us, the player, get access to it. Toriel may have even been taking care to hide this relationship from the public, so that Chris or Asgore don't find out. But then, of course, her getting wine drunk with Sans meant that her delicate hiding of the relationship just straight up goes out the window. This would also align with the relationship Sans and Toriel have in Undertale. If you consider the theory that the Undertale Sans is the Deltarune Sans post-Deltarune to be true, then that means his fondness for Toriel and relationship he has with her in the ruins makes even more sense than it did in the old game. And even if you don't consider that theory to be likely to be true, it is still a reinterpretation of their close friendship in Undertale, in the same way Deltarune continues to reinterpret a lot of Undertale's characters, story, relationship, and just general themes. As well as the Eggman alluding to harvesting wheat and the baker saying that he needs a master of bread, both of these again allude to a field, where one would harvest wheat and likely suggest we will have to find this master of bread somewhere within the dark world, the field's dark world to be specific, to unlock gluten intolerance related recipes from the baker. I can't believe this is evidence, but it is. The pink and gold descriptor is interesting as well. While it could allude to Asgore himself, since he wears a pink t-shirt and has golden hair and a beard, I have a feeling it instead could be alluding to our friend. Yeah, that guy, who's been just out of reach the entire game. Friend is a minor unsettling entity in Deltarune. He appears briefly across chapters and related content with a creepy watchful presence. In Chapter 2's Cyberworld actually, he manifests in the Queen's mansion basement, the same one where you go to help out Spamton. And if you walk to the ledge in that teacup room and you run back and return, you see a poorly drawn face with a toothy grin and heterochromatic eyes. which are yellow and pink that resemble Spamton's glasses, appear in the darkness before, they stare a little bit and then they fade away. Identified in the game files as a program entity, sprite image underscore friend, object device underscore friend, friend is distinct from Spamton and tied to meta assets like the title screen, suggesting that, he has a potential connection to even Gaster. But let's be honest, there is so many things in this game that have a potential connection to Gaster. Like, you may actually go insane at the possibility of how many Gaster connections you can find out there. It also appears in the unused assets for Birdley's fight, showing its curved smile and teeth on a barrier, but this was cut from the final game. In Chapter 3's Late Night Dark World, Friend emerges during the weird route as well. In this route, is summoned by the Shadow Mantle during the battle, and may even be the wearer of said Shadow Mantle. This is important to remember, as we'll come back to it, so keep it just in the back of your mind. It's also referenced in Rousey's monologue on Dark World creation, laughing and lunging at the player. In hidden rooms during Chris's playthrough of Tenna's game, Friends' eyes, or smile, flash briefly. In Chapter 4, Friend shows up in the Cat Petters minigame after reaching 1 million points, its face staring directly at the soul. In the third Sanctuary Sacred Darkroom, pressing a yellow switch reveals Friends' face on an unreachable path. Its Chapter 3 form is implied to be a shadowy cat-like silhouette. Outside the game, Friend appears in the Spamton sweepstakes on Deltarune.com. Clicking the chair on the chair page triggers a jump scare with Friends' eyes and a laugh, paired with a text, "But what if it could get darker than dark?" In the Cat Petters minigame, Friend is an ultra-rare destructive cat, Cat 000009, that spawns randomly, resetting scores with a jump scare. All of this sets Friend up as a character who has become more and more prominent with each subsequent chapter, and his heterochromatic eyes seem to be just a consistent motif across the game. Spamton's eyes, Azrael's controllers. Many different times in the game we see this constant pink and yellow, pink and yellow, pink and yellow theme return. It's borderline maddening, so it can't just be coincidences. Most importantly as well, in the tease that Gerson gave us for Chapter 5, the field of pink and gold. Pink and gold! We've seen various teases across the sweepstakes and Chapter 4 that we could potentially be seeing a cat, or a cat's tail, inside of Chapter 5. This seems to be the tail of a cat from Cat Petters, likely even the glitched egg cat that Noelle discusses in the Spamton sweepstakes, as the circles making up the tail exactly matches the style she describes Cat Petters depicting the cats. In Spamton Sweepstakes 2, Noelle describes Cat Petters 2. Don't expect me to actually mimic Noelle here. As you may know, Cat Petters 2 is one of this admin's favorite games. To those that don't know, it's a game where you take care of a cat and raise it. Sounds simple, right, XD? Actually, the game has a really deep animation and breeding system, so players have been able to hex edit the game data to create brand new pets. If you download the right mods, you can raise birds, hamsters, cars, cartoon characters, and even more. Mew Mew Queen's Simpton family pack is a great example of how far things can go. However, you have to be careful, because not all mods are very compatible. When pets fall in love, an egg appears, and it hatches into a new pet that combines the animation and visual data of the two parents. Meaning, if you try to breed a hamster in a car, you'll either get a complete freak of nature, or worse, you'll get this message: incompatible pet. Then the game will freeze and the music will glitch out. I was so scared of seeing this message as a kid, I would punish my pets so they would never fall in love. If an egg did appear, I would throw it in the trash right away. Until one day, if you have no pets, it's known that there's a rare chance for an egg to appear giving you a random pet. This is the only way to get some of the secret cats in the game, which are still super rare on top of that. So it's a lot of waiting for eggs, hatching them, and throwing away tons of cats trying to get the perfect character. This caused other problems, but I'll explain that another time. But one day, when I was trying to get the ultimate cat, something weird happened. A white egg showed up on my screen, but there was a message with it. Special. I was really excited, but I've never gotten a special egg before. In fact, I'd never even heard of it at all. I sat there for an hour waiting to see what it would turn out to be. Maybe I would be the first one to discover a brand new cat. But what was weird is, the egg never hatched. I started to worry that it was some kind of glitch, so I decided to try and get rid of it before it hurt my computer. And that's where things really got strange. No matter what I did, I couldn't move or throw away the egg. I tried clicking it over and over. In the end, all that happened is it made some sort of weird sound. This freaked me out so much that I deleted the game and reinstalled it. But the egg was still there, obviously. Now that I'm older, I think what happened is I had so many mods installed that the egg didn't know what to hatch into. But at the time, I thought my computer was haunted or something, or the egg was trying to kill me. After a few hours of freaking out, I eventually faced my fears and loaded up the game again. The egg was there, but it didn't seem to be doing anything, so I started raising it like a normal pet, brushing it and playing with it and stuff. By the end of the day, I actually started thinking it was a cool pet, and maybe I could try to figure out how to upload it online as a mod. I wasn't able to do that though. The next day when I opened the game, the egg was gone, with a message that said it left home due to happiness. Usually the message is pet left home due to sadness, and only happens because you neglected your pet. It's not supposed to happen because you were nice. One last thing, the egg actually had a name, but I don't remember what it was. It's been driving me crazy ever since. If anyone else has ever seen an egg in their game like this, please sign my guest book. Please. First one gets 100 cheesy points from me. I'm sure you noticed the absolute truckload of friend connections throughout, but let's highlight a few strong ones. Had this egg ever hatched, according to Noel, it wouldn't have been a secret, potentially never before seen cat. This egg reference is likely twofold. One to the obvious collectible eggs in every chapter, hidden behind secret areas, and bad eggs from Pokemon. In Pokemon, a bad egg is a glitch item that represents corrupted or invalid Pokemon data. It often appears when using cheat codes or when data corruption occurs during gameplay, particularly after actions like, stealing opponents' Pokemon or using illegal movesets. Bad eggs can cause issues like game crashes, data corruption, or even loss of other Pokemon. It is a headache you don't want to have. And then, when the glitch egg finally does leave, it gives a unique message, left home due to happiness, rather than sadness as it would normally say. This final anomaly, to me, almost confirms this glitch cat petter's egg is the origins for friend. Leaving home due to happiness is likely a reference to the very unique smile we consistently see friend depicted with. Speaking of that smile, we should talk about the Cheshire Cat. In Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat is a mysterious feline who functions as a guide, trickster, and philosophical instigator within the surreal chaos of Wonderland. Encountered in a tree, it provides Alice with cryptic advice, such as proclaiming "we're all mad here," while asserting that all paths lead somewhere, embodying the absurdity and ambiguity of Wonderland's logic and tying it all in neatly with Deltarune's themes of choice and the inevitability of fate. Its signature trait, which is vividly captured in Disney's 1951's animated film, is its gradual disappearance, leaving only its wide, toothy grin, which sparks, the insane question, can a grin exist without a cat? This highlights themes of just illusion, existential uncertainty, and the disconnect between appearance and reality, a core theme of Dark Worlds in Deltarune. The Cheshire Cat's neutral stance, neither fully aiding or obstructing Alice, paired with its defiance to the Queens of Hearts' authority, establishes it as a symbol of chaotic autonomy, playfully challenging perceptions while navigating Wonderland's dreamlike rules. Does this at all sound familiar? The Cheshire Cat's elusive grin and enigmatic presence strongly echo Friends' unsettling grin-focused manifestations in Deltarune, particularly when its toothy slasher smile that appears and vanishes mirrors the cat's lingering grin in the animated version of Alice. The Cheshire Cat's notion of a grin without a cat directly aligns with Friends' pattern of appearing primarily as a disembodied smile, while its cat-like silhouette still remains a tease. This creates a parallel of presence and absence. Both characters exude ambiguity and meta-awareness. The Cheshire Cat uses riddles to disrupt Alice's understanding of Wonderland, while Friends' programming entity status and disruptive jump scares break Deltarune's narrative boundaries, suggesting a deeper meta-driven purpose. This sounds insane. It connects a little too well. The cat's mischievous neutrality resonates with Friends' eerie interruptions, and its autonomy reflects Friends' potential independence from in-game figures like Tenna or even Gaster, framing it as a chaotic entity tied to the pink and yellow motif of Chapter 5's Field of Pink and Gold. In Chapter 5's Field of Pink and Gold Dark World, tied to Osgore and the pink and yellow colors matching Friends' heterochromatic eyes, Friend has to make its first legitimate, tangible appearance here. Potentially as the tease like Cat's Tail from Chapter 4's Prophecy, Drawing from the Cheshire's Cat role as a guide into Wonderland's depths, Friend could lead Chris and the player deeper into Dark Worlds, or towards forbidden secrets, such as the enigmatic bunker, or literally any Gasser-related conspiracy, like the Cheshire Cat playfully leading Alice into trouble. Friend could mischievously guide players toward uncovering dark truths about Asgore's jealousy, or even the origin of the Dark World, or even things about the prophecy. Even as a potential secret boss and holder of this last Shadow Crystal, the idea that the Friend, if it is a secret boss as any of these teases suggest, would hold the final Shadow Crystal leads me to an interesting conclusion. Frankly, a rather insane one. Back during Chapter 1, when we first began our investigation to the Shadow Crystals and secret bosses, who started us on this journey? When we first find Jevel's cell locked, who does he send us to? Sham. Who sends us to the key pieces and guides us to unlocking the cage? It was Sham. Guess who calls out the Shadow Crystals and instructs us to find more? Sham. And who most importantly somehow knew we would need the Shadow Mantle, thus knowing our next fight would be the Knight, since the Shadow Mantle's entire ability is to negate the swoon effect? It was Sham. Sham even thought that they had the Shadow Mantle until they went to look for it, then mysteriously had no idea where it had gone. Though was interestingly not that bothered it had been taken. This idea that Sham was aware enough of our fate to know our next battle will be the Knight, and was also intimately aware of the Shadow Mantle, an item that Friend now had, leaves an interesting conclusion to draw. Is Sham Friend? If so, it would mean that Sham almost certainly still had the Shadow Mantle in that dialogue with us, and they were simply lying about not having it so they could face off with Chris later, when the time was right. They're both cats, so the connection is pretty obvious at a surface level, and Sham clearly has a much higher level of knowledge than other Deltarune Darkeners. Look at the celebration when we leave the Dark World in Chapter 1. They choose specifically not to come. They had absolutely no interest. Could it be that they were aware of the fact that we'd soon return to move all of them to Castletown anyways? And that this was not the permanent goodbye that everyone thought it was? I'd honestly argue yes. However, even if Sham has this higher level of awareness, I think the connection may be a tad more nuanced than just Sham is Friend. I think it's a lot more. I think that Sham and Friend are heavily connected, in a way that we've already nearly figured out. Sham, as we know, is seemingly a cat plushie or a stuffed animal. This gives a staunchly different appearance than what we've seen of Friend, who's suggested to be obviously a cat, but also seems to be able to shapeshift to at least some degree. But I think we should take a closer look at Sham. We can see they have a button over one eye, seemingly serving as an eye patch over some eye injury. You can even see the scar, the stitches coming down from the eye. But looking into the other eye hole, we see no pupils, just darkness. This dark, I would suggest, either is Friend or is where Friend used to be. Deltarune fans have long half-joke, half-serious theorized about the concept of Toby's Friend Inside Me song from a lot of years ago, coming back as a secret boss maybe, or some concept, or even as a part of a song. While initially, the theory started with a cancelled cowboy TV show for Chapter 3, and have now moved to a potential favorite TV show of Asgore's that was cancelled, I think we actually got very close to something extremely important to Deltarune here, and only the idea of who the Friend inside was wrong. I believe that Friend essentially serves as Sham's Dark World stuffing, a sort of second being to Sham, another form, another half of them. This being split into parts theme is something I believe Deltarune is actually building to quite majorly across not just Sham, but Des and obviously even Gaster as well from way back during Undertale. But that's, again, a whole different theory for another video, and this one's already dragging on, so let's just keep moving for now. This other half of Sham idea would make sense. They both seem to know more about the Dark Worlds than us, and seem to want us to do these secret bosses. And when fighting the Shadow Mantle holder inside of the game in Chapter 3, it's ultimately a pretty playfully toned fight where they clearly intend on us winning to take the mantle. This goes back to some of those little pieces of information I asked you to remember earlier, like the Shadow Mantle and Shadow Crystals are both items that Sham is very, very familiar with. And we know from the crafting recipes inside the game that the next Shadow Crystal we obtain should at least be the final one. And from there, somehow these shadow crystals will become pure crystal and be able to be combined with a thorn ring. But judging by Sham asking us to bring them all the crystals, it's likely they themselves will be the one to purify the crystals for us. If that's the case though, why not just do it with each crystal we bring them? It would be easier and we would at least see what they do with it. I think it's because at the moment, Sham does not have full access to the extent of their power. I believe that Friend escaping from inside Sham and likely causing the injury to their eye is what caused them to lose a majority of their power. Toby takes care to depict them as this old wizard, someone with powerful magic, yet they serve as nothing but a shopkeeper in the game. Speaking of that, their items, as they warn us themselves, are becoming more and more useless with each chapter. This would suggest to me their real purpose is only to exist as the main grounding point of the various secret boss puzzles, offering new dialogue and hints each time you bring a shadow crystal until they finally purify them all for you. I believe they have set us on this path of the secret bosses explicitly, so we end up with every crystal and eventually have to overcome Friend for the final one, thus returning their power to them and giving them this ability to purify the shadows once more. Now that we've dropped a bomb like that, let's take a small breather and zoom out from the depths a little bit. As we discussed in the beginning of the video, the idea that the next chapter will be fighting Asgore in the Dark World created in this flower shop is very signposted. A little too signposted in my opinion. This is interesting because everyone so far that I've seen has taken a lot of these teases at straight up just face value, assuming that this is exactly what will happen and that discussion to the contrary is basically borderline, useless, pointless. However, when we look back at how Toby signposted some of the other chapters, it makes me want to take another look at all of it. At the end of chapter 1, we see Chris get the knife and make an incredibly evil expression after removing us from their body. This suggested that obviously the next chapter was going to have Chris have just done something evil, perhaps even killing Toriel. But when chapter 2 dropped, Chris only went around the house preparing things for the Dark World, like plugging the TV in and getting some pie. Then come the end of chapter 2. We see Chris create the dark fountain in their living room, with the door left open. This had fans 100% sure that it meant we would see Susie finally confront Chris for clearly being the knight, or clearly not, depending on who you ask, and that Toriel and Undyne would both play major parts in the chapter, maybe even joining the party, but at least surely learning of the Dark Worlds. However, Toriel sleeps throughout the entire chapter. Susie doesn't ever really confront Chris about making a Dark World themselves, and Undyne only shows up in the last couple of minutes to immediately be taken to the bunker, thus also defeating the idea the Light World would all learn of Dark Worlds with this chapter that we had all taken for granted. What I aim to say is, so far, every teaser for future chapters has technically been true, but also kind of misleading intentionally, so that something in the next chapter always surprises us. Once again, I think we've fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, and taking all of this Asgore stuff at face value as the entirety of chapter 5 may be setting us up for failure and for a pretty nasty surprise. So if that's the case, is there anything else being set up right now that could potentially be this X factor we aren't counting on? I have a few ideas. Firstly, I'd like to briefly mention the fact that we are shown Asgore has a stack of superhero comic books in the corner of the flower shop living space. This could be setting up a potential superhero themed section of the Dark World, or some group of superhero darkeners who appear. Another thing that I think deserves a note, Rudy's condition noticeably worsened after going to church. It's very clear that his body is not up for going out, but he's pushing himself beyond his limits in order to fulfill promises he made to Noelle. And his next promise in that regard will be going to the festival for Noelle. I believe when he goes to the festival, the day after the church without any recovery, his body will reach a breaking point. Whether he literally dies or he just collapses and he's on death's door, either way, I think it will play a really major part in the next chapter, and it will play into Noelle's actions in what happens in chapter 5. Speaking of Noelle's actions, one thing worth keeping in mind is that outside the weird route, Noelle still believes that the Dark World visit she had prior was a dream. This means that she would not factor it into her decision making in the future, even if she was taught on how to open a Dark World, and considering the weird route is trying to teach Noelle this early, I think it may be something that happens soon. I believe Noelle learning of Dark Worlds actually existing will likely be the beginning of the end for Deltarune. Let's take a look back at the Weird Route page on the Spamton sweepstakes. The various numbers and their colors and sides represents how the Weird Route works in the various chapters. However, one thing people haven't discussed much is it ends at 5. That suggests, in my opinion, the game itself may end in Chapter 5 on the Weird Route. It'll be the point that we've collected all the Shadow Crystals, and now Noelle is already aware of the Dark Fountains, likely suggesting whatever sweeping conspiracy goes with the Weird Route is going to culminate here. We discussed earlier that the crafting recipe data in the game gives us some idea of the future of the Shadow Crystals, but what about the Weird Route? We're pretty sure the Shadow Crystals are purified by Sham to make the pure crystal, which then you'll be able to combine with the Thorn Ring to make the Twisted Sword, which actually has a trance down status effect, rather than the trance up, which the Thorn Ring has. So I think it would effectively free Chris of our influence, the opposite of what the Thorn Ring does to Noelle in Chapter 2's Weird Route. Could this, combined with Noelle now understanding Dark Fountains, be why the game will end in Chapter 5 for the Weird Route? Could Chris and Noelle, now much more powerful, actually manage to break our hold on the world of Deltarune? For now, it remains a mystery, but I still think it's something to ponder. We also know that Azrael is set to come home from college soon, most likely tomorrow, aka Chapter 5, which is seemingly on Sunday. We learned near the beginning of the game that Azrael was set to come home from college next week, but what exactly is next week? That's the question. Some people consider the week to start on Monday and some on Sunday. If only there was some sort of proof as to which of these camps Toby Fox fell into. There is. Spoiler alert, there absolutely is. Back towards the end of April, Toby had sent out a tweet on Sunday the 27th that he would be releasing a newsletter towards the end of next week. Then the newsletter came out on Friday the 9th of May. This means that for the phrase the end of next week to have made sense to Toby in that context, he must consider Sunday the beginning of the week and not the end of the prior one. This leaves the possibility that the comment of Azrael coming home next week is suggesting that Azrael will arrive back in hometown during Chapter 5 to kick off the game's final act. But why come home on a Sunday? What's so important that day? Why the festival, of course. This event, hyped since the beginning of the game, is going to see the entire town out and about and fully decorated. Judging by what we see from the preparations, the festival is going to have some sort of Christmas theme to it. We also know the entire town will be participating. This potentially sets up most of the residents of hometown to be in the same place. That way they can either all see the Dark Worlds together or all end up trapped inside of one. But why would there even be a fountain at the festival? Why not just specifically at Asgore's flower shop like many people think? Let's combine all of the Chapter 5 research we've done here and try and come up with a guess for Chapter 5 we can be confident in. It should also take into account that the relatively obvious teases, Asgore and the flower shop, are likely only the surface of whatever is going to happen in this next chapter, right? So let's begin. We saw in Chapter 4 Asgore became extremely desperate to win back Toriel, literally standing outside the church and hiding until she came outside to try and give her flowers. One thing to notice is he says he wanted to be a family again before Azrael came home. I believe that's because this night was his last chance to rekindle things with Toriel, as in the morning, Azrael will arrive home. Chapter 5 would then begin with Chris awakening to a knock at the door, followed by loud talking from the living room. Upon walking downstairs to investigate, we find that Azrael has returned home. However, he ran into Asgore first, and the two decided to come visit Toriel together, with Asgore planning one last Hail Mary attempt to save their marriage by bringing Azrael and making them all feel like a true family again. But by the time Chris gets to the living room, an argument is heated and in progress. In arriving so early in the morning, Asgore has found Sans still at your house, having slept over after his date with Toriel. This would infuriate Asgore, setting up the inferno of jealousy. From here, Asgore would storm out, determined to punish Sans and prove his innocence in the death situation. He would want to win Toriel back. He would return to his flower shop, he would go to the back office, slam the double door shut, and from here, Chris, at Toriel's behest, would go talk to their father. maybe with Asriel in tow, or maybe he went with Asgore already. But upon walking outside, the festival preparations are well underway. Mayor Holiday is overseeing various decoration setups, and we end up running into Noelle, who's happy to see us and excited for her date with Susie at the festival later. We meet up with Susie as well, and we both agree to go with us to talk to Asgore before the festival, with Noelle noting we need to hurry because her dad promised her he would come as well. But by the time we get to his flower shop, Asgore, using the black shard we learned he had in Chapter 4, has opened a dark world inside the flower shop double doors. Why? Likely to learn more or investigate what really happened to Des. Now that him having a black shard implies he has some knowledge of the dark world, the idea that he knows something happened to Des is one being the reason he couldn't prove his innocence. No one else would believe in the dark worlds. We open the large double doors to talk to Asgore and end up in the dark world. In this dark world, Ralsei will make a very little appearance, if any at all. I suspect it's for a few reasons. Number one, I think his appearance being similar to Asriel would surely arise suspicion from Asriel if he was there, or Asgore if he wasn't, which is seemingly a rabbit hole that Toby has so far been very careful to avoid. The other reason is, since Susie and Noelle were together with us, they are both in our party now, with Noelle replacing Ralsei. This is where I believe the first major twist will come in. The Dark World here will actually be relatively short, and Asgore will not be the main boss of Chapter 5. The boss of this Dark World, yes, but not Chapter 5 as a whole.
Somewhere in this field, we will also likely meet Friend and learn far more details about their origin and intentions. It's here I think we will also have the reveal of Sham, or Friend, being parts to the same entity. This will come along with the reveal that they had once played a much more active role in events.
What Ralsei is to you and Susie, Sham was to Asriel and Des. However, that topic is the subject of hopefully our next video, so I'll just move on from that for now. From here, we return to the Light World. We may have learned more on Des from Asgore, or maybe not. Either way, the large takeaway would be that Noelle would surely now know the Dark Worlds are real. And since there's no Ralsei this chapter, someone is going to have to become the healer. Susie's healing may evolve once again into a spell genuinely worth using, or Noelle may learn, healing magic by herself. But once our heroes return to the Light World, they experience the same real-world issues all Dark Worlds have caused so far, a large passage of time. Rather than a few minutes in and out for Asgore, it's been hours, and the festival is well underway. Noelle runs to find her dad with Susie in tow, and we follow. Once we catch up, we see it. Rudy is weak. His body was simply not ready for the festival today. And staying out so long trying to find Noelle meant that he pushed himself way too far. He collapses on the ground, likely about to die. Noelle panics. This is her fault. If she had just been here or not made him come at all, this wouldn't have happened. In her pain and remorse, she stabs the ground, creating a dark fountain and hoping to use the healing spells she had learned about this chapter to save her dad. But there's one issue. This dark fountain is outside. There is no room or building for it to be contained by. This, along with Noelle's blatantly signposted incredible power, means that we will see the largest dark world created yet, absorbing the entirety of Hometown, and this extra large dark world will actually be the majority of Chapter 5's gameplay, leaving all that we were teased with using Asgore in the field the opening. And we learned exactly what the residents of Hometown would do in this event of a disaster like this. Time and again in the Church of Chapter 4, characters mention that the shelter, as far as they all know, is a disaster shelter meant for hiding out. I think as Noelle plunged the entirety of the festival and Hometown into a dark world, the roaring will finally begin. From here, the residents of Hometown outside the dark world or after its closure are forced to run to the bunker for cover, going inside and leaving that as the cliffhanger for Chapter 6, and potentially even a heavy-handed Gaster reference as well. But that's about it for this video. And that wraps up most of my ideas for Chapter 5. I feel like I got all of what I wanted to say out, and I feel pretty good releasing it as our first actual Deltarune video. Even though maybe we covered an insane amount this video, I think it was all for the sake of having something good to point out as our first video. Let me know if you're interested in more Deltarune content in the comments, and let me know if you do enjoy Deltarune content, whether or not you agree with the ideas and theories presented here, and give us any feedback you guys have about any ideas you have about the stories.